Something came from Baltimore, Baltimore, Baltimore. Something came from Baltimore, Baltimore, Baltimore.
Welcome to another episode of Something Came from Baltimore. I'm your host, Tom Gouker, and on the phone, one of my favorite guitarists of all time, Al Di Meola. The interview was recorded during the COVID-19 pandemic, and Al just released a wonderful collection of Beatles songs called Across the Universe, which is a perfect companion during the stressful times that we are facing. This is the second set of Beatles songs he released. The first one was a collection in 2013 called In My Life, a Beatles Tribute recorded in Abbey Road. Al was bummed out that he had to cancel his year of touring, and he is writing it out at home. Just to let you know, I am a big fan of Al Di Meola, and I was excited to speak with him. Everyone knows Al, right? He's the guitar player for the amazing Return to Forever. He has classic albums through the years. He worked with Jaco Pastorius and John McLaughlin. Amazing world music guitarist. There is nothing he can't do. They rescheduled the interview 3 times, and then there was a notice that it would never happen. And then I was told that it would only be 20 minutes, was just not enough time in my mind. I ended up scrapping a ton of questions, but we ended up chatting for 50 minutes, and I would love to release the whole interview. Drop me a line and let me know if you want to hear the whole thing, and we'll get it started. I just want to mention that Something Came from Baltimore is a labor of love podcast, and that means that I'm such a music fan, and I know you are out there, and I'm happy to share these interviews with you. But as an independent podcast, there is just no revenue stream attached to this project. Hopefully someday there will be, but not today. And I'm reaching out to our listeners to tip and help support our efforts. Cash App and Venmos is available under the name of Thomas Gouker, Gouker. If you don't have the money or the time, subscribe to this podcast, make comments, and rate Something Came from Baltimore as a 5-star, obviously. What this does is help drive advertisers to the podcast. Before we get into the interview, first, let's listen to a sample of Julia. It's a haunting song that John Lennon wrote for his mother. Hello, Tom speaking.
Hi, it's Al Di Meola.
So how are you doing with the corona situation?
I have weak moments and, moments where I just bury myself into some music, and it's getting harder. It's just getting harder because there's no bright spot in this thing. And then if I motivate myself to, submerge myself into music, downstairs, I know that I love reading music and writing, so when I get into that, for that hour or whatever, I completely lose myself in it, and then it's like a relief, it's like a total relief.
As a level of escapism, the album that you created, though, the Across the Universe, has it's like a warm blanket because it has you have your basic Beatle melodies and the basics to it, and then you're creative all around it. It's a nice piece of music for people to daydream and kind of wrap themselves around it to get away from some of the news that's going on.
Right, it brings you back to that time, place and time of innocence and youth, a lot of good things that happened in that beautiful period in which the Beatles made the world a much better place. And those songs have a lot of aesthetic and beauty to them in their simplistic form. I love all of their work from the early days as well. Because when I listen to it now, I realize just how vibrant it was. Even the early stuff, so vibrant. And then as they went on, the music became more and more, had much more depth in terms of production, introduced classical instruments and orchestral instruments and sound effects. And there was that healthy competition between John and Paul in the composing area that made for just greatness, you know. When you think about it, the Beatles were the first world music band. When you listen to the Beatles, it's amazing, you know, how good those sitar pieces that George brought into the Beatles are. You know. Luckily, I got to meet Ravi Shankar at a guitar trio show we did, Universal Amphitheater in L.A., and he came backstage. He came over to me and goes, "Man, you play really, really, your technique is amazing." This is Ravi Shankar, so I was like, wow, get any kind of compliment from him was a big deal.
The album cover it's a homage to the rock and roll album cover from John Lennon. It was a great idea. Who came up with that idea?
Well, the record company, totally. I mean, and in fact, they picked all the photos. So they wanted to do this plus a 2 or 3 day photo shoot, plus make 2 videos. And they were great in doing what they did and putting up whatever they had to put up to make all of that happen. Because there was quite a lot of people involved. And one of the shots was in that doorway that I really didn't think was, I don't know if I even knew that record. It was after the fact. I go, oh yeah, John had a cover. And I didn't even know which album that was, because after the Beatles disbanded, I was not a huge, fan of the Beatles going solo. Kind of when I went deeper into jazz and jazz rock and world music and all kinds of different other music. I was just not a fan.
There's nothing wrong with the solo stuff. It's just that you're waiting for that Beatle magic to happen. So you're getting a John.
Well, it never happened.
It never happened.
It never happened. No, it never happened. No.
And you just keep on buying the albums, going like, okay, maybe it's going to happen on this album. Maybe it's going to happen on this album, and you're always let down, which is it's a problem.
If it happened, I would have bought it. How could you compare anything that John did solo to Benefit of Mr. Kite or something like that, or Strawberry Fields or I Am the War or something like that, and at least 50 other ones,
There's talk that he started to lose confidence in his vocals, and he would put the layering on it and like the echo effect, and you're like, wait a minute, this is John Lennon. He has like a phenomenal voice. And where did he... Phenomenal voice.
Where did he lose important, it? Too. Yeah. He wasn't working with the same guys. He wasn't working with the same engineer, and he wasn't working with George Martin. George was very instrumental in being the grown-up in the room, and he was able to convince him, don't use this one, let's do another take, So you needed that person who wasn't awestruck with these guys. They got to a point where they were already icons, and a point where, like, who was going to tell them that that's not happening, especially if they were excited about something they did. George Martin had a way with just recently, you could hear all the outtakes of a lot of stuff they did because they were available. And some of it's so horrific. So someone was there, and that was George Martin, to help mold these pieces and take out the flocky stuff and edit this and edit that. And what they wound up with, incredible track. Amazing. So I don't think they had that person when they went solo, even though they were very happy to be solo at that time and not in the confines of the Beatles, John, putting Yoko in the middle of the room was really like, come on, this is too much, putting her on a bed in the center of the studio. John, had his ways that were very difficult for the guys to swallow. George wanted to bust out more as a writer. They probably didn't really want so much surprise them with the Abbey Road editions of Here Comes the Sun and something. And, Paul felt like the guy carrying the band along while John was kind of diverted with Yoko's craziness. But they had a great run, You can't say they didn't have a great run. Wow, they left us with a legacy that's unbeatable.
Do you feel that there's any opportunity, you've been in bands before, any opportunities to save that band? Would you give them any advice if looking back and say, this is what you got to do?
John was extremely opinionated guy, and he would say things, according to Paul, and I kind of believe him, but he would just say the most outrageous things, and he would put stuff down, and you know what I mean? And there was a lot of fuel for contempt and arguments. And I think Paul was kind of a peacemaker. George was kind of a quiet guy, and Ringo was happy to be there for the most part. Being the way John was, it was probably very difficult, And who was going to tell John you can't bring Yoko into the studio? She's opinionated and she's dangerous. It won't be the first time that a band has had somebody like that. But if they were the kind of young guys, really young guys, that were impressionable and were amenable to listening to someone, like they were in the beginning, then you would say to them, hey, for the sake of doing another killer record, take a little time off, but let's come back as the boys and keep doing their home, not in the center of the studio, and things that would happens with every band. They remain pissed off at the guy, for one reason or another. And that actually did happen. And we're finding out about that much later. And it was those little things. And then John did, on a solo record, something against Paul, that he probably carried around for 10 to 20 years of being hurt. Got to get over it. I mean, I had the same situation with John McLaughlin. We didn't talk to one another for a long time because of interpersonal problems when we were together as a trio. So, if John had lived, how great would that have been if they got back together as the Beatles and that same magic came about and you got another Sgt. Pepper quality record or Magic and Mystery Tour? Probably wouldn't happen because in those days, they didn't have the distractions that we have today. It's really hard to make a record today. Not only because the budgets are 1/100th of what they used to be, but I think cell phones and computers have absolutely effed us up tremendously because we're constantly looking at a phone, constantly being diverted our attention is grabbed by so many things that we're doing involving networking, and focus is not there. And that goes for everybody in the room that's recording. If you happen to be in the room recording with a band, everybody's checking their phones. Everybody's not totally focused. In those days, not anyone in the studio. It was only about developing the song. And if there was one phone in the control room, the receptionist outside was told not to let any calls go through, just take messages. And that was total focus. And those records of the 60s, listen to them. What is it about those records that sounds so great? Focus.
I picked out a couple from this album that I really liked. And Norwegian Wood, to me, was it's a cool folk song that with a sitar, and you just really expanded that thing.
Yeah, because the original, which I, of course, I love it. I don't think anything is beatable, but I had to bring my own voice into this. So, if I were to have recreated what they did, I'd be doing an under 2-minute song, because that's what Norwegian Wood was. Don't realize that the original was under 2 minutes. That's crazy, So, as an instrumentalist, when you don't have the affordability of having a voice with lyrics, inclination is to something more. So I thought of what I could do to write other parts for it, to make it more of an instrumental excursion or a suite. That's what I did on a lot of the songs. I elongated the compositions because I didn't want it to end so fast. It was so wonderful, to begin with. So what can I do to make it, bring my own thing to it, as if I was a writer of one of the pieces.
Look around, round, 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 round. Look around, round, 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 round.
The Prudence is more close than, let's say, Strawberry in the middle. I go into this whole big Indian kind of center that's totally written, and it's a little bit more a place in which you could get lost for a second. But it returns to what you know. And that's the important thing. So it's okay. It's okay to do that, and I think it's necessary to do it. Otherwise, you wind up doing a cover, and a cover of the Beatles. There's thousands and thousands of covers, and they're not very original. They're just people trying to do exactly what the Beatles did, but they can never come close. It came out cool, but it was really fun to play drums and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to nail that Ringo fill so deeply embedded, indelibly in my mind, in everybody's mind. If you know the song, you know that you go da 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 da. So it was like a satisfaction, kind of physical satisfaction to do that.
Your mother should know. It's from the Magical Mystery Tour. It's a real deep cut. I always love that song. I think you had a lot of liberty, because I don't think a lot of people still remember that you were able to really kind of take it and change it.
Oh, that's another piece where the whole center is a whole kind of, it's just where my mind took me. It's like, it wasn't a lot of thought. It was just like, okay, get in. They got a spot right here where I can go to this sequence, and then it just led to this next sequence. And I was writing as it came to my mind. And when you get in that kind of inspiration, that depth of inspiration, it happens so fast, and I write as fast as it comes into my head. Then I analyze it. But it's very hard to get that. It's hard to get into that depth of inspiration. Usually what happens is you don't get that far down, and you belabor it for God knows how many hours or days. But on that one, I remember it just flowed fast, and it actually is a very, very, very cool part. Because I can imagine playing it live. There's no cover aspect to it. And in fact, you have the melody that we know, and a lot of it's chord melody. But then there's moments when I burst into a fill. So that fill might encompass 2 beats. So that bar, instead of being a 4/4, will be a 6/4. So when it's all said and done, there's enough of me in the piece, which takes it further away from it being a cover.
I thank you very much for speaking to me on Something Came from Baltimore.
Yeah, man. I can't wait to come there.
Yeah, we can't wait to have you. Trust me. You got the Hamilton, and we got Ram's Head. We can't wait to see you.
Yes. Can't wait to come back and we get out of this mess that we're in. Stay safe, pal.
All right, great.
Okay?
All right, thank
Take
you.
care now.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Something came from Baltimore, Baltimore, Baltimore. Something came from Baltimore, Baltimore, Baltimore. Came from Baltimore, Baltimore. Something came from Baltimore, Baltimore, Baltimore.
Hi, it's Tom Gouker, and I am the host of Something Came from Baltimore. Something Came from Baltimore is a words and music podcast, and it has famous and future famous artists like Sean Jones, Rupert Holmes, Auntie Hammy, Joey DeFrancesco, Go-Go Penguin, Joey Alexander, Bucanti, Gerald Albright, Paula Cole, and Kat Edmondson. It's music that matters. It's music for your ears. Listen and subscribe to Something Came from Baltimore and be a part of that Be More music scene.
Something came from Baltimore, Baltimore. Something came from Baltimore, Baltimore. Something came